It's 1 o'clock.
Yes, here we go.
Hello?
Hello, Rabbi Rose.
Hello.
Everybody is going to be mute at this point. All the audience will be muted. We'll begin our program in a minute.
You're good to go, Donna.
Waiting for Reverend Caseman. We'll start the program in a minute. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin our program in just 1 minute. Hello, my name is Donna Mason, and I'd like to welcome you to this interfaith virtual town hall meeting. On behalf of the American Muslim Senior Society and our sponsors, Montgomery County Palliative Care and End of Life Coalition, we're glad that you joined us. We'd like to begin the program with an interfaith prayer, and we're going to ask Reverend Pitts if he would be so kind to say a few words before we begin our program. Reverend Pitts.
God of our weary years, thou who hast given us life, thou who has opened up possibilities for all of our faith traditions to come together and join in this webinar. We thank you for this day. We thank you for those on this webinar. And we ask your blessings upon each and every one of us, those who are presenters and those who listen and participate. And we ask that whatever we do during this period might be of honor and glory to you. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Pitts. We also want to make sure that our audience knows that this program is being recorded and that you will be muted for most of the program. Now, about today's program. Our objective today is to hear and learn from representatives from 3 faith traditions. They will describe their experiences as those they serve face the loss and hardships resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. There will also be an opportunity to hear from them as they compare among themselves the similarities and differences within their faith traditions. However, we want to hear from you as well. You will have an opportunity to ask the presenters questions via the chat function on Zoom. The instructions are on the screen, and we encourage you anytime to type in your questions on the chat function, address it to whomever you wish to respond or to all, and send it. We hope we can answer all of your questions. However, we will feature the contact information for our presenters, and you may wish to contact them after this program. Before I introduce the presenters, we will hear from Dr. Dina El-Shazly, AMPS Committee Board Member, retired Professor of Dentistry, Alexandria, Egypt, who is also a member of Montgomery County's Interfaith Refugee Resettlement Neighbors. Dr. Shazly?
Thank you, Dana. Welcome to the American Muslim Senior Society, the first in a series of interfaith dialogues sharing traditions for life decision. On behalf of American Muslim Senior Society Board of Directors, ambassadors, stakeholders, and staff, we thank you for your participation in our webinar and for your continuous support of our mission. For our guests who are not familiar with the American Muslim Senior Society, AMSS, we are a 501c3 nonprofit health and long-term care organization with a mission to empower the county diverse 55 plus and caregivers, especially the underserved, isolated, and marginalized older adults. We provide them access to the culturally sensitive tools and resources to improve their quality of life and give them the opportunity to live with dignity in their communities. In the present days, COVID-19 pandemic is presenting many challenges, and it's critical for us to first identify the most vulnerable people, their needs, and the available county resources that can help and support them. Second, safely reach for them while following the CDC recommendations of wearing masks and social distancing. Third, support and comfort those who grieve or who lost beloved ones during this pandemic time. Our hearts go out to all who have been affected by this pandemic, especially those who were unable to be close to their beloved ones, unable to hold them when they were suffering and dying. We have a wonderful program for you today, which will relate to these challenges and present you with hopeful outcomes and helpful resources. And we will start by a short video that presents the mission in action of AMSS and the different activities and services presented by our ambassadors to the community in Montgomery County, Maryland. I hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you.
The American Muslim Senior Society was established 2 years ago with the purpose with the mission to identify isolated, underserved seniors and then link them and their caregivers and link them to the service delivery system, whether it is in Montgomery County or within the community, and give them the tools and resources so that they can age in place with dignity. So the American Muslim Senior Society is really a model of partnership and diversity in action. We have established partnership with 11 of the 11 Islamic community centers in Montgomery County, have worked with their leadership to identify the need of the community. We have partnered with 17 of the county premier health and long-term care agencies, public and private organizations, to identify and coordinate and harness the county resources and channel them in the most effective way to those most in need. In addition, we have identified, trained 47 multicultural, multi-ethnic, multilingual health and long-term care outreach ambassadors who have become the tool, the outreach vehicle into the isolated communities, and have right now successfully connected the seniors, the caregivers with the resources in Montgomery County.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nafisa Toure. I'm a program specialist with the Maryland Department of Health. I am also one of the ambassadors for the American Muslim Senior Society, and I've been with the organization since its inception. An outreach ambassador goes out to members in the community in order to find out what they need, especially the isolated, the sick, the underserved, and the aged. I have two clients in White Oak that I help. One of them has a degenerated lung disease and is on palliative hospice. And another one has a very progressive Parkinson disease. Basically, 75% of my clients are non-Muslims. Through AMSS, one of them was able to get a nurse's aide that comes over to help her with her personal hygiene 3 times a week, 2 hours a day, 3 times a day. And we also got a wheelchair, a walker for the gentleman that had the degenerative Parkinson disease. And we connected them with some of the services that they needed.
Hi, my name is Farouk Musa. I am ambassador for AMSS. Okay, the idea came, we've been doing a lot of things for the senior, and this idea came to serve our senior at least once a month, meal and meal, halal meal and meal. Make people happy, I see a lot of smile. But then I thought one meal a month is not enough. We should do much better than one meal, like once a week or something.
Hello, my name is Barbara Kadar. I'm an ambassador for American Muslim Senior Society. I'm also a retired nurse. I worked mostly with recruitment for the CNAs for AMSS. The need for CNAs in our community is because mostly of the same faith, same religion. We have a diverse community, and they're able to relate to the seniors in how to prepare themselves for prayers when it's Ramadan, so that they're sensitive to the needs of these individuals. The CNAs that we have recruited, these are individuals who are new immigrants to the country. Also, they would like to be employed but are not able to afford to do the pay for the classes for CNA.
Thank you, Dina. And for those of you who'd like to learn more about AMPS, please visit the website www.amssmd.org. Now, I would like to welcome our presenters. We are very fortunate to have 3 outstanding presenters who have agreed to share their own experiences with us today. I'd like to introduce them all. Reverend Dr. Tyrone Pitts serves as co-chair, you can read it on the screen, of the Coalition to Transform Advanced and Diversity Working Group. He is also General Secretary Emeritus of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Rabbi H. David Rose has worked for more than 25 years serving synagogue communities. For the past 8 years, as an interfaith chaplain for the Jewish Social Service Agency's hospice program, Rabbi Rose has been deeply honored to accompany patients and their families through grief and loss. Imam Mohammed Abdullahi is the imam at the Muslim Community Center in Silver Spring, where he leads daily congregations janazah prayers and delivers Islamic lectures. The imam also provides guidance and support to the community in the matters of Sharia. He is also one of the few trained Muslim chapters for the Montgomery County Police. We will begin with Reverend Pitts.
First of all, let me thank the American Muslim Senior Society for sponsoring this interfaith virtual town hall meeting during this devastating time in the history of the world, when the triple pandemics of COVID-19, global poverty, and racism has created a new grief normal, a moment when the experiences of grief, defined as a deep sense of loss due to health, death, separation, has now impacted every aspect of our lives. I want to especially thank Mona Negram for inviting me to participate in this interfaith dialogue on grief. I am so appreciative of her leadership in the Interfaith and Diversity Working Group of CTAC, the Coalition to Transform Advanced Care, that has over 120 health and interfaith related organizations that's committed to equity in healthcare and whose mission is dedicated to the ideals that all Americans with advanced illness, especially the sickest and most vulnerable, receive comprehensive, high quality, person and family-centered care that is consistent with their goals and values and honors their dignity. This year, the American Muslim Senior Society has been working together with CTAC and other faith communities participating in webinars. And we're delighted that CTAC and the American Muslim Senior Society will be the co-sponsors of an Outreach Ambassadors Training Seminar in September of this year. As a people of faith confronting the loss of loved ones, jobs, and financial security during this time in our history, I am indebted to the American Muslim Senior Society, our moderator, Ms. Donna Phillips Mason, Reverend Castleman, Dr. Elzazi, and Dr. Langley for their outstanding contributions to this virtual town hall meeting. I'm especially humbled to share my faith experiences on grief as an American African Baptist Christian minister on a panel with distinguished institutional faith leaders, Imam Mohammed Abdullahi and Rabbi David Rose. As we discuss the issue of grief from our various faith traditions, we will witness the intersectionality of the grieving process in our funeral services, our wakes, and our family and community and religious services during this webinar. The guiding principles of walking humbly with God during the COVID-19 pandemic compels us to recognize that in many ways, we are more similar than different. As I reflect on my personal experience with grief as a member of the Progressive National Baptist Convention Incorporated, which provided the home for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the ministers who were part of the civil rights movement, I cannot discuss grief in my own Christian tradition without embracing the current collective grief of the Black Lives Matter movement of mothers, fathers, and family members who have chosen to make public their grief. They have turned their grief into a struggle for justice, not only to lift up the memory of their loved ones, but to save others. In my faith tradition, historic grief and trauma are an integral part of the African American tradition and deeply rooted in spirituality. The South African understanding of Ubuntu, I am because we are, and we are because I am, expresses the importance of recognizing that grieving is both personal and communal and is deeply rooted in our collective memory and personal experience. The concept is affirmed by the understanding of the importance of community in each of our Abrahamic traditions. The American African Baptist Church, which was one of the Christian churches that was organized during slavery for our survival and liberation, has over the years assisted us in our collective grieving process as an African people. As a result of our history in America, slavery, genocide, apartheid, segregation, Jim Crow, lynchings, and police brutality, our forefathers and foremothers who went before us have provided us with inspiration and courage to continue to turn our personal and communal grief into public and moral movements for peace with justice. The African tradition and concept of Ubuntu has provided us with the understanding of how to deal with grief as a personal and communal spiritual reality. During the grieving process in my faith tradition, similar to the Muslim and Jewish faith traditions, we experience the loss of a loved one or members of the community. Our rituals provide us with the opportunity to be surrounded by a community of faith with spiritual discernment that consoles us and supports us during this time of need and feeling of loss. In our Christian faith tradition, these acts of communal kindness and support affirms for us that this earth is not our permanent home and that we will find our eternal rest from this life of trials and tribulations in heaven, while we will be joined with our mothers and fathers and our ancestors and enjoy eternal life. I remember my experiences with grief as a 7-year-old child celebrating the homegoing of my great-great-grandmother, Lethea Norris, who was born in slavery and who died when she was thought to be over 100 years old. Oh, how we celebrated her life with a 24-hour wake, which was displayed red lights in the room. People visited our house and we stayed up all night before the funeral celebration. Then the next day, after a long funeral service, we followed her to the burial ground and went back to the church where the mothers of the church prepared a meal and we all enjoyed and celebrated together. I remember when I was a 14-year-old boy, watching my older 17-year-old brother, Clarence, struggle with his last breath. He died from an asthma attack without having access to a doctor in our community. I remember the grief and trauma I experienced for years, blaming myself for his death. I also remember hearing stories about my Uncle William, who was lynched in Texas before I was born. I remember the grief I experienced as an adult after being the caregiver for my great aunt, who lived with us during my formative years and who died at 93 years of age with gangrene in her foot. I remember grieving at the death of my Aunt Emma, who was shot to death by a young boy in her bedroom in Washington, D.C. And I remember being by the bedside of my mother, Lethea, in hospice care as she transitioned from this life to heaven. And I remember most recently grieving for the death of my father, Clarence, after being his supporter and caregiver for several years. I have come to realize that memories of grief from our past may be, just may be, distorted by the nightmares of our present reality. Today, as a people of faith, during this triple pandemic of COVID-19, racism, and poverty, we confront a new normal in America with heightened mental, psychosocial, religious, cultural, and economic anxiety, loss, and trauma. And we as a community of faith are experiencing a new paradigm shift in our nation and our world. Traditional methods of grieving in our faith traditions have been affected. As a people of faith today, we are challenged to reimagine, re-examine, and re-envision our approaches to grieving in light of the health, social, and economic crisis that we face today.
3-minute warning, Reverend Pitts.
For me, for my American African Baptist faith tradition, one of our challenges today is to examine the lack of trust in our healthcare system due to historic and current institutional racism and the abuse. Some physicians, therapists, clinicians, and medical professionals have not provided culturally responsive, person-centered, and high-quality family-cared healthcare. Sadly, many have not honored our cultural values and our dignity as American Africans, especially if we were homeless or poor. Our challenge today is to find ways to envision how we work together as faith communities with health plans, healthcare systems, clinicians, physicians, and therapists to promote grief counseling and mutual support during this time from the perspective of Ubuntu to ensure that the criteria counseling for American Africans and other members of our communities from the medical perspective is both communal, spiritual, and cultural. Many of our churches are supporting their communities with food shelters, COVID-19 testing, support services, and virtual counseling services. What is needed more than ever is to renew our faith traditions, to continue their efforts to find ways to work together to provide support to the countless millions of people that need to find hope during these perilous times. Historically, our convention and churches have been engaged in communal worship services expressed by African traditional relationships. Many of our churches are worshiping in parking lots, having abbreviated worship services and social distancing. Our pastors and ministers are grieving because of their congregations. They often struggle with their own psychological needs. The intensity of a number of deaths, illnesses, and the needs to do creative grief counseling has created unimaginable stress, trauma, and grief for our pastors. Dr. Mitri Rea, a Palestinian Christian theologian, once said that hope is faith in action. Today, our churches are moving forward, engaged in hope in action, with the faith that God's promise to us through the witness, life, and love of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ will enable us to overcome our personal and collective challenges of grief by acting justly until justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream.
Thank you, Reverend Pitts, for your comments. We're going to move on now to Rabbi Rose.
Thank you. Thank you to my fellow panelists, to Dr. Reverend Tyrone Pitts, Imam Muhammad Abdullahi, to all who've put together today's program, American Muslim Senior Society, Montgomery County Palliative Care, and End of Life Coalition. I am truly honored to be here today to speak with all of you about grief and my experiences working as an interfaith chaplain on a hospice program, the Jessa Hospice, and as a rabbi. Grief. Grief is our response, our reaction to loss. Grief is a complex emotion. It is multifaceted. Grief happens whether we welcome it or not. It just happens when we experience loss. Grief impacts us emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Today, we are all grievers. We are a nation, a world of grievers. We grieve. We grieve almost 180,000 human lives cut short. Hard to get one's head around that. We grieve the loss of so many jobs. We grieve the loss of many opportunities. We grieve the loss of our routine, loss of normalcy. We grieve the loss of certainty. Everything is up in the air. Grief reactions are many. Grief reactions are very human, and they cross cultures and religions. You know, we are used to we are used to our grief affecting only one family or one community at a time. When that happens, we are divided into mourners, those who grieve, and comforters. But today during this pandemic, we are all mourners and we are all comforters. We know from experience that grief brings numbness, loss of focus, detachment, fatigue. Today, I believe most of us are experiencing these emotions. I think most of us are experiencing this numbness. I know I am. I'm finding it very hard to focus. I imagine that many of you share this feeling. Like many of you, when I greet someone I haven't seen for a little while, I naturally ask them, "How are you?" What I've heard in response these last 6 months is, Okay, not too bad. I'm coping. I can't remember anybody in the last 6 months responding, I'm great or fantastic. Why? Because we're all impacted by this. We are all grieving. We are grieving lives lost. We are grieving loved ones. We're grieving community members, fellow Americans. And so many other losses, the loss of hugging grandchildren, the loss of school, the loss of sending kids off to school, the loss of a smile from the barista when we get our morning coffee. One loss after another. Every day we experience more of these losses. Every culture, every religious tradition has created ways, rituals, behaviors to help us cope with our loss and our grief. Today, we're turning to our ancient traditions for the wisdom they teach us for coping with loss, helping us to grieve. This afternoon, I want to focus on 3 Jewish traditions which I find very helpful today, which I hope all of you will find helpful, whatever your faith or background. The Jewish tradition teaches us to be real when confronting loss. A natural human reaction to loss and grief is denial. After all, grieving is uncomfortable. Dealing with change is hard. When confronting loss, we all go through a period of holding on to the past. The Jewish tradition confronts this denial by having mourners participate in the burial of their loved ones. At a traditional Jewish funeral, the casket is lowered into the ground in front of the mourners, and those gathered are invited to shovel earth into the grave. Usually shovels are provided by the cemetery, but during COVID-19, families need to bring their own and to bring wipes. The first shovels of earth hitting the casket make a loud, hollow, echoing noise, a noise that calls out painfully, this is real. I see a lot of denial as a hospice chaplain. People often tell the hospice chaplain, don't tell mom or dad that they are in hospice. But what I've found over the years is that when you tell mom and dad that they're in hospice, when the family is real, when they understand the truth that is in front of them, they can respond to it and they can make meaning of the last days of life. There is so much denial around us. We must stop denying that we are living during this pandemic. People going out without masks, gathering in large crowds, are denying what's happening, and they're making life less safe for each and every one of us. Second thing I learned from the Jewish tradition is the importance of getting and staying in connection. In the Jewish tradition, as in most traditions, grieving is a community event. A quorum, what is called a minyan, a minimum of 10 is required for burial. For a week in the Shiva, in the mourning house, at the start and end of the day, this quorum, this minyan is needed. Today, unfortunately, most of us need to do this virtually. This speaks to our need for connection to other human beings. This need is the most basic of all needs. It is an enduring part of our existence. This need for others begins in our infancy and continues throughout life. One of the hardest things for me experiencing over these last 6 months during this pandemic is, as a hospice chaplain, seeing the isolation that it has caused for so many. Parents separated from their adult children, individual residents of nursing homes having to stay in their rooms, having to stay in their building. So much isolation. And so I think an important part of dealing with our grief is to check on those around us. check on your elderly neighbor down the hall or up the street. Make daily calls or virtual visits to loved ones and friends and acquaintances. Particularly important near the end of the day when silence and darkness make the isolation more intense. Be there for others. Make a ritual each night of connecting with a few loved ones, saying good night, I love you, see you tomorrow. A third ritual teaches me the importance of holding on and letting go. An ancient Jewish tradition mentioned in the Bible is the rending or tearing of a garment upon hearing of the death or a loss. Jews still perform this practice today, ripping sometimes a garment, sometimes a ribbon of mourning. This act symbolizes the wisdom our tradition teaches about grieving. For tearing creates a hole, as any loss creates a hole in the fabric of our lives. But to tear, you need to hold tight. You need to hold on. The process of grieving is the process of determining what we let go of and what we hold tight. When we grieve an individual, we let go of their physical presence, and through the process of mourning, discover what we hold on to from their lives. What were the lessons they taught us? What is the legacy? How do I feel their love that is always with me? Someday, hopefully sooner rather than later, we will bury this pandemic. We will let its presence out of our lives. And I wonder, what will we hold on to then? What are its lessons, its legacy? As a hospice chaplain, when I'm comforting the dying and the soon to be bereaved, I try to help the dying who are capable of doing so and their family members talk about the legacy they're leaving and the legacy that they are receiving. This conversation about legacy, about lessons learned, helps people to grieve and to move forward. It reminds them that their grief is not just about loss. It's about holding on to something of meaning. What is the meaning in this pandemic? What can we learn? All of us will find our own lessons. I think we've learned that we can communicate and connect virtually. We have learned the importance of being able to connect virtually. Hopefully, we will take away from this the ability, our power to make this ability available to everyone in our society. Some of us have learned that we don't need to commute quite as much to get our jobs done. We've learned how to work on our physical health when we're stuck at home. Many, many lessons of this pandemic. We need to talk about them, gather them up, hold on to them when it is over. And so I learned that this is real, that we must stay connected, and that we must learn to hold on to the crucial, important lessons of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Rose. And now we're going to move on to the Imam.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon of you. And it is, first of all, it's my honor and privilege to be with you today in this webinar where we are unable to meet physically, but here we are. Almighty God give us this opportunity that we can share our stories and see each other. And this is one of the opportunities that coronavirus bring to us. There is a lot of challenges, but also there's a lot of opportunities when the families who used to be away from each other sit down their home and share meals and stories. And so those are the opportunities of coronavirus, but as well as also there's a lot of challenges, that there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of uncertainty. And in the end of the day, in the Islamic tradition, we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilahi raji'un. To Allah we belong, and to Allah we shall return. So I would like to thank you, American Muslim Senior Society, to inviting us and bring us together and give us the opportunity to, share our stories and communicate to each other. And especially I want to extend my thanks and gratefuls to my Mama Muna, who established this great organization to help our senior citizen. And in the teaching of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, he said he is not among us, the one who are not respectful to our elders and merciful to our youngers. And also in the Holy Quran, Almighty God command us to worship none but him and to be dutiful to our parents, because our senior group are our parents, and they are our neighbors, they are our relatives, they are our colleagues. So we should take care of them. It is something that it's not optional in the Islamic tradition to take care of the elderly, parents, and because they are our parents and neighbors and grandfathers and grandmothers. So I thank you, Sister Muna, organizing this and care those who are seniors in the Muslim community, as well as those who are young. Coronavirus pandemic bring a lot of challenges, whether it's emotional, whether it's social, economic. A lot of people, they lost their jobs. A lot of people, they lost their lives. We all hear or have some family members or friends who lost their life. Myself, I lost my best friend who used to call the prayer here in my masjid for coronavirus. And that was the most difficult time when I was in his, when we were burying him in the cemetery. And he was a very gentle, social, and caring man that everybody who attended his janazah, his funeral, was crying, all the brothers and the sisters. So it was very difficult for me, and we still coping that challenges and difficulties we went through. My own father-in-law, even though it was not coronavirus, he died during the coronavirus. And as you know, it is very difficult. In Islamic tradition, when someone lost their loved one, we go and visit them, we cook for them, we comfort them, and we share this sorrow with them. But in this pandemic, it's very difficult to visit the families. The only way you can, comfort and to just, either you call or you FaceTime, or that's the only option is we have. And of course, there is a big difference when you call someone and talk, and when you are physically there, when you can hug the person, when you can shake hand with the person, when you can, touch their shoulders and comfort them. There's a big difference. I myself lost my father-in-law during the pandemic on May 29, and it was very difficult. What made things more difficult was when we take him to the hospital. And in the hospital, they don't allow you to be with your lovely one. You have to just drop off and leave, as if you are delivering a piece of paper, or you are dropping off someone and just leave. What made more difficulty also was that they don't even allow you to cook food, the traditional food for the lovely one, when they are in the hospital. That was also very difficult. And as we all know, in this difficult time, it is not something that we brought. I remember the first Friday, every Friday, we used to have up to 1,500 people in our center. Every Friday, we have a 2 service. The first service we have close to 1,000, the second service to 700. When we decide to close the mosque, and Ramadan was only 28 days away from us. I thought that it will be a couple of weeks and then we come back to our normal life. I never thought it's going to be what it become later on. And I never imagined that will be a time that in our prayer, we cannot stand shoulder by shoulder. In the Muslim tradition, when we do our prayer, we stand shoulder by shoulder. Now we have to have this social distance. And, you know, standing shoulder by shoulder, it gives you that the connection between the brotherhood. And we are in this pandemic, all of us, under this situation, whether we are here in the United States or anywhere else around the world. And another way I said, Almighty God showing us his power when a small virus that we cannot even see eye naked, bring the whole world to its knee. And we have no power, we are powerless. We cannot see it, we cannot fight. Yes, we can, wear masks. Yes, we can practice social distance. Yes, we can wash our hands 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times a day. We can do what we're supposed to do and it will help. But at the same time, it was not our hand. It is Almighty God's hand, the one who controlled the world. And that's why in the Islamic tradition, we see this life as a temporary life. None of us came to this world with our permission. We all find ourselves in this world. None of us know which family and which country and which place he's going to, and which family is going to belong. We just find ourselves. So he brought to us this world, and we are going to leave this world without our permission. That's why in the Islamic tradition, we say when someone dies, the first things we said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To Allah we belong, and to Allah we will return. And also, in the Islamic tradition, we believe that if someone dies as a believer and as a good person who do righteous actions, he will be in the eternal life, the true life, it's hereafter. He will enjoy the paradise where it's the rivers of honeys and milks and wine flowing through. So one of the also difficulties that we are facing as a community at large, as a human beings, it is this coronavirus bring a lot of anxiety and uncertainty and also difficulties. We find out a lot of domestic violence. As an imam, I'm witnessing a lot of domestic violence during this time where, the family, they are together. And of course, some kinds of disagreements and challenges will occur. And I find out there's a lot of divorces happening, a lot of family issues going on. I'm doing counseling with a lot of families. And on the other hand, we find out the beauty of the human beings. A lot of people, they come out and they ask, how can I help? Imam, how can I help? What can I do? Can I, cook food for a family? Can I deliver medicine for the elderly brothers and sisters? Can I, donate some money, any cost? The young, generations, they reaching out and they saying, what do you want us to do? We have food pantries. We reopen our clinic. We didn't shut down our clinic at all during the pandemic, but it was very limited. It was by appointment. Now we open more, and our doctors, they see more patients in MCC clinic. We increase our food pantries. We are supporting over 200 families. We distribute food every 2 weeks. So there is a lot of positive things and good things going on in the community at large as well. It is not only the Muslim community. We also see a lot of churches, synagogues, the county itself, that people are reaching out. People are, asking, how can I help? What can I do? I'm participating in a lot of activities in the county, as well as the Muslim community and other faith community as well. So I can tell you, I'm so pleased and I'm so happy with all these difficulties and challenges that we are going through. There is a lot of opportunity also. And I thank you, and I thank you, my colleagues, Rabbi David Rose and Reverend Bettis, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Iman. Now, I would not, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Mona Nagam's vision for this interfaith dialogue. And one of the things Mona stressed was having the opportunity for our three presenters to interact with each other, to talk about the similarities within their faith traditions. So I hope that you will enjoy this very unique exchange, part of the vision of Mona. Thank you. And I think Rabbi Rose is going to begin.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to my colleagues. There were quite a number of similarities, I think, in our presentations. The one that was most clear and strong to me was the importance of community, the importance of engaging with other people, how much we're missing that presence of our loved ones around us, that ability to stand shoulder to shoulder, to sit together in church in the pews, to join together in the minyan and the quorum that I spoke about. And so we have to work hard. We have to work hard at finding ways to make the connections, to make deeper connections, because we need them even more at this time. We also all spoke about finding the blessings, finding the things that are beautiful and good in this. It's so easy to see what we've lost. We have to work hard at putting on our glasses of appreciation, of gratitude, for there is so much to be grateful for. I invite my colleagues also to share.
Thank you, Rabbi David. I just wanna, the similarity of the Abrahamic faith, it is obvious. For example, in the Islamic tradition, we believe all the messengers of God. We don't differentiate it among them. And if I don't believe the gospel, the Torah, and the Quran, for me, it is equal, because we believe that all of them, they came from God, and God is the one who created all of us. And in my prayer, as I mentioned before, in my khutbah, when I started the sermon, I always started the prayer that Moses, peace be upon him, said when Almighty God sent him to Fir'aun. And Moses say, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. On chapter 20, in the Quran, Almighty God say in the tongue of Moses, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Oh my Lord, open my chest and make my matter easy, so that they may understand what I'm trying to tell them. So that's what I always start in my sermon every Friday. On the other hand, from the Christian perspective, Almighty God in chapter 5 told us that you will find out the most closest to the believers, those who say we are Christians. Why? Because they are not arrogant, and among them, they are pastors and priests who are so humble. So there is a lot of similarity in Islam: humbleness, gratefulness, being fair, and just its core value. Thank you.
Reverend Pitts, do you have a comment? Reverend Pitts? Okay.
Please.
He's in mute.
He's on mute. Reverend Pitts, would you unmute yourself? Okay, well, this is one of those technical glitches. Reverend Pitts? Okay, well, while we are having this discussion, I'd like to bring somebody else into the discussion. Reverend Mansfield Caseman is with the Office of Community Partnerships. He was unable to get in earlier to our conversation, but Casey, as many of us call him, would you like to make a comment? And can you unmute yourself, Casey?
Thank you. My sincere apologies for having a mysterious problem getting in. So I wasn't here to be offering a prayer of invocation, but this is very moving for me. Everything that has been shared is illustrating two things in my mind very quickly that come popping to mind. One, how much we are the same and at the same time really need each other. And then at times like this, as we go deeper into our faith, we discover the truths that all of our faith traditions teach us, that we are one. We are sisters and brothers of one human family. And so today, I think all of us are experiencing that in ways that are deeply meaningful and in ways that will be helpful to us, knowing that we're not alone. And what's most important in all of this is to know that the divine, by whatever name we use, Allah, Yahweh, God, is a very present source of comfort and strength. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm back now. Can I just make one statement?
Oh, sure. Is this Reverend Pitts?
Yes, it is. I do apologize. For some reason, I wasn't able.
No problem. No problem. Please.
I'd just like to first of all thank the rabbi and also the imam for their comments. One of the exciting things for me is this session, but also the similarities and uniqueness of our Abrahamic faith traditions in relationship to dealing with this coronavirus. The excitement of dealing with the issue of loving justice and mercy and walking humbly with God, as Micah stated, Prophet Micah stated, and also the cooperation that we have had over the years, not only in various movements in this country, but also our perspective on dealing with the issue of grief. And I see more in common with us as we move forward and try to relate to how we are going to really deal with some of these issues, pressing issues that are before us, than I see us being separate in dealing with. So I just want to thank Amon and also the rabbi, and look forward to having more conversations with you in the future.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to encourage those of you who are in our audience, if you have questions, to submit them using the chat function so that we can answer them. And now I'd like to introduce Tina Purser Langley, who is Senior Health Wellness Coordinator for the Area Agency on Aging, Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Tina's going to help with the questions, and after the questions, Tina's going to go over resources available in the community to support individuals and families. So Tina, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Donna. And thank you to our wonderful presenters. It's just an amazing, amazing presentations by all three of you and the discussion. And thank you, Casey, for joining us as well. We have one question right now in the chat, and this is for all of the presenters. So if you will, all presenters, please answer. It says, what actions would our presenters recommend that we can do to comfort those who are grieving during COVID-19 pandemic, so we are all as safe as possible? Let's see, how about we go with Dr. Pitts first? Could you answer that one for us?
Yes, I think one of the things that we can do to comfort those who are grieving is to let them know that we are with them and that we are also participating in the grieving process with them. One of the challenges that we have is this distancing from this coronavirus. But one of the opportunities we have is the utilization of the webinars and also technical areas, new technology, to begin to communicate with individuals and families in ways that we have not been able to do it before. But our presence is tremendously important in whichever way we can do that. So I would hope that we would begin to think through how we can have a presence of support for those who are grieving.
Great, thank you. Iman, would you like to comment on that question?
Yes, so I just agree with Reverend Betts, and in addition to that, I think we should let them know, the family who's grieving, that we are there for them. We share with them the pain and the suffering they're going through. And if it's possible, I know it's very difficult, but with the social distance and mask, maybe if the families, maybe we can meet with them, if that's possible. If not, then we just use the the social media and Zoom and what we are using, and we just do our best to comfort them, to let them know that we are there for them. We are we are a human family, and we are friends, and just comfort them as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Rabbi Rose?
I also agree with my colleagues, but I'd also like to add a few things. I think it's important that we set a routine of comforting those who need to be comforted, those who have losses. Can we call every Sunday afternoon that they can come to expect our call? Can we have some other routine that helps us to remember to call, to reach out, to visit where possible? And when we visit, as Reverend Pitt said, it's about presence. And I'd like to add that presence is about listening. When we're nervous, and it's a nervous situation going and visiting somebody who's had a loss, when we're nervous, we tend to talk. We tend to fill the space with our words. And grief and comfort require the comforter to shut up, to be silent, to share a word or two. I'm sorry for your loss. I hope you find comfort. And then let the mourner, let the person who is grieving dictate the conversation. Let them share things about the legacy of that person. And if maybe you need to encourage that a little bit more, you can say, would you like me to share how I knew your father or your mother or whoever is being mourned? Again, giving the mourner the ability to direct the conversation as much as possible.
Yes, I agree. And we had somebody who also commented in the chat saying it's very important to reach out via text or just call or find out how somebody is doing. And I feel like that's very important right now during this time. We did have another question for Dr. Pitts, or can each of you speak about the rituals and religious law around burial immediately following death? And then we have a question specifically for Dr. Pitts. So could each presenter answer the question about the rituals and religious law around burial immediately following a death? Iman, do you want to take that one first?
Yes. So
Great.
to begin with, in the Islamic tradition, when someone dies, we should bury that person as soon as possible. And we should do 4 things. Number 1, we wash the body. Number 2, we put a shroud, what we call coffin. And number 3, we do a special prayer service at the mosque. And number 3, we take the person to the cemetery for the burial. And after that, from the Islamic tradition, we share the sorrow with the family. Of course, now we cannot do that in this pandemic, but in the normal time, we visit the family, we sit with the family, we listen to their stories, we talk about the person's legacy, we cook for them, we comfort them, we cry with the family, and that for several days.
Mm-hmm.
And also we take turns, when one visit right now, like half an hour, some other person will take the turn and come and comfort the family. So that's what Islamic tradition is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Rabbi Rose?
The Jewish tradition is awfully similar. We also have the practice of burying relatively quickly. In this COVID-19 world, that means perhaps a little bit longer time than we're used to, but we try to do the burial as soon as possible. We also have a tradition of a group of people who have the holy work of washing the deceased. Depending on the COVID status of the deceased, that has also required some adjustments, but the burial societies who handle that work are making those adjustments to make certain that everybody is treated with great respect and honor. Never thought it would happen 7, 8 months ago, but I've been doing Zoom funerals and going to Zoom Shiva minions to the service at the House of Mourning. So we're finding ways of adapting. And as I said before, we also find some blessings in it. The Zoom services I've been at, funeral services that I've been at, have people from all over the world. Previous to this, we just had the people who were able to physically be there, be at the service. So that's added something. I imagine in the future we'll continue to find ways when we can gather in the community to welcome to these services people who live far off who can't come.
Great, thank you. Dr. Pitts, if you want to comment on this, and then we have another question for you to provide a little bit more background on the roots of Ubuntu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we have a question.
Yes, let me respond to our particular rituals, because I think that our Christian tradition, they vary. Within the American African Christian tradition, or the Black Church Christian tradition, it stems from African rituals, some of it, and also it's a merger of Christian rituals. But our particular process in the funeral service and in burials, and I mentioned this with my great-grandmother, because she was a descendant of slaves and direct descendant of slaves. And for people during the 50s, when they had services, one of the things they did is they had a wake, which was leaving the body overnight, and also having a 3-day period when the mourning occurred before the burial service. And I learned from one of my great grandfathers that the wake was done because there was sometimes a situation where the person was really not dead, and people waited until the person, to see whether or not the person was dead, whether or not they would come to life. And so that's why that particular issue was done years ago. But normally it's 3 days. We have a wake, we have a funeral service on the Sunday, we have a burial service with the family and loved ones, and we do not deal with the body ourselves. That normally is given to a funeral director or to a funeral home to deal with that particular issue. So that's basically how it's done. But again, it's varied in various communities. European American or American European communities may not do it the same way. Christian communities may not do it the same way as we do it within the American African tradition. In terms of Ubuntu, Ubuntu is a concept, a South African concept, which derives from the understanding of community. I am because we are, and we are because I am. It is a concept that was made very popular by Desmond Tutu during the Free South Africa movement, although it is really grounded in South African tradition and culture. And basically what it does, it calls together community to let people know that as they experience pain, suffering, joy, and celebration, all of the community experiences that. And also it's not individual, but it's collective. And that concept is also a part of other African traditional concepts, but the word Ubuntu comes from the South African construct in that area.
Great. Thank you. Could you comment all of the presenters on cremations? Are there any cremations going on at this time, or how do family members go about doing that?
I'll jump in and say that traditional Jewish practice does not do cremation. Over the last few decades, that's become more popular in the Jewish community, and certain elements of the Jewish community are accepting of cremation. More traditional elements, the Orthodox, some of the conservative members of the community will continue to insist upon burial. Cremations are handled through the funeral home in our community.
In the Baptist church community and the Christian community, cremations are also not very popular, although that are really moving towards cremations more and more. And a lot of issues related to cremations are really related to cost. And so that's one of the issues that are concerned, that have been of concern to our community. But that is not a normal phenomenon within our Baptist tradition.
So my battery died, so I was not aware of the question. Now I'm using my cell phone. So what was the question, please?
We're discussing cremations, and if that is a ritual or something in your faith tradition.
In the Islamic tradition, cremation is forbidden. It's something that it is absolutely prohibited to practice in the Islamic faith. And the reason is that the messenger of God, peace be upon him, said, fire is something God made it. And he is the only one who have a right to banish it. So in the Islamic tradition, it's absolutely forbidden.
Okay, thank you. Another question that I have is if each of you could discuss the difficulty of long distance caregiving. And I know you all touched on it a little bit, but that's very difficult in our, with grief and loss. So if each of you can touch on that just a little bit, that would be helpful. Thank you. Rabbi Rose?
Indeed, caregiving from a distance is difficult. It was difficult in the pre-COVID-19 world, and is more difficult now. I think the importance is one needs to find partners in the community where the care needs to be provided. I know at the end of our program today, you're going to share resources for people. One of those care providers, one type of care provider is the hospice programs. And I encourage people to inquire about hospice when their loved one is approaching end of life, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're imminent, but rather that they're not going to be going to the hospital anymore, that aggressive actions aren't going to be taken, and that the focus is on easing the person's days. The focus is on comfort. One should look into the hospice that's available in an area, because that will bring medical support, emotional, spiritual support. But also there are more and more care managers and different types of programs that are bridging the distances that now exist.
Dr. Pitts or Iman, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, the challenge of caregiving for our communities is very difficult, primarily because many of our families are taking care of loved ones. They're taking care of people with disabilities or special abilities. They're taking care of people who have special needs, but also the elderly and seniors, and they're doing it in their homes. And so there's a piece of this caregiving process where people are doing caregiving even in the midst of the COVID virus. But there are also some challenges, like the Imam said, when people have to go to the hospital and they then are left in the hospital without any relationship to the ones they love. That presents a serious problem and concern to individuals who are separated from their families. So the level of caregiving is still going on in our communities among those who have family members in their households, but also the struggle to deal with caregiving from a virtual standpoint is really, really difficult. And I'm not sure, and I struggle with this, and I'm not sure if you can caregive virtually. Again, that's my challenge right now as we deal with this particular issue of COVID-19.
I can tell you from personal experience, I'm trying to do that for my mother who's in California, and it's very, very difficult. Iman, would you like to add anything to that? And I think we have 2 more questions before we have to get to resources.
I agree with my colleagues that it's a challenge. It's very difficult. Maybe, you know, consulting with a physician or asking some, but in terms of taking care of someone who cannot take care of themselves, the only option, I think, you have to be there. So it's a difficult, it's a challenge, yes.
It's very difficult, yes. Okay, thank you. We have a question. Today we see, and it's going back to our rituals that we were discussing. Today we see intermarriage as being more common. How does that affect dealing with rituals, etc.? Could you answer that one, maybe Aman, with the rituals? How do we see that with the intermarriages becoming common?
I think that we have a lot of intermarriages in our community, and when we talk about intermarriage in the Islamic tradition, it should be between the 3 Abrahamic family. We don't accept outside of the Abrahamic faith. And in Islam, as individuals, we are entitled to our belief. Islam said, Allah said, "La ikraha fi din." There is no such force in terms of faith. People are entitled to their faith. However, when the intermarriage take place, that each person, husband and wife, should respect the other person's faith and ritual and support, not only accept it, but be supportful. That's what I always encourage when faith intermarriage take place in my mosque.
Good, thank you. Rabbi Rose?
Yes, that's a huge question, and maybe someday we'll have a panel discussion on that one. Hard to answer it in a moment, or as we say in my tradition, on one foot.
Right.
But I would say that communication is crucial. Communication and respect. Sometimes couples get married and they leave questions of religion and spirituality. Oh, we'll get to that when we have kids. And when they have kids, oh, we'll get to it when they're old enough for school. And the questions get put off and off. And really, from the beginning of a relationship, it's so important for that couple to communicate on what their values are and how they wish to transmit those values to the next generation.
But in faith tradition, it's really interesting because when you talk about the Christian church, you're talking about many churches with many different layers of belief systems. Basically, we believe in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, but in terms of dealing with social issues, there are a lot of different layers for some of our Christian churches. From my experience as an American African Baptist church, intermarriage has not been a major problem, primarily because we come from multicultural roots with a lot of different faith traditions being a part of the African experience in America. And so one of the things that has not really created a problem within our tradition from the American Baptist Church, for instance, has not been a struggle over interracial or intermarriage issues in our particular congregation. There are other issues that have been problematic, but that has not been one. But in the American European church, conservative church versus liberal versus progressive, we have certain levels, and it varies in all of our different Christian traditions.
Well, thank you. Thank you all so much. I think the time has come. We're trying to stay on our schedule, and I think I have to move to resources. There may be a few more questions, but we will answer those questions and present them to the presenters and then send that back out to everybody. So I'm going to go through some of the resources that I pulled from the county. Now, these aren't all exhaustive resources, but they're just a few in grief and loss with supportive services. I'm just going to run through them very quickly. We have put the links here, and you'll get this sent out to you, but I just wanted to touch base with a little bit of them. The first one is our Aging and Disability Resources through Montgomery County. This unit provides personal hands-on assistance and referrals. Right now during COVID, we are answering the phones and giving lots of different information. So please call them. If you don't remember any phone numbers, remember the 240-777-3000. Our next is Caring Matters, and a lot of people know this as hospice caring. And Caring Matters serves children, adults, families with life-threatening illnesses.
Tina, I'm going to ask Malak to do the screen share so we can see these resources.
Okay.
Malak?
I am sharing my screen. I'm not sure why you can't see it. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm the only one who can't see it. Okay, thank you.
So I just wanted to mention that Caring Matters can also provide supports and community education, and it's all free of charge, but it's not a hospice, but there are volunteers and staff available to provide these services. Every Mind is a friendly visitor program. It provides emotional and social support to older adults that are homebound and isolated. Clients are matched with trained volunteers. And during this COVID time, there's telephone contact. So if there's a need out in the community, Every Mind can fill that need. Jewish Council on the Aging, the Senior Helpline, is another free service. It's another helpline that you can call for information, and you have people who can reach out to you and provide services via the telephone. The next is Holy Cross Caregiver Resource Center, a wealth of information and supportive services for caregivers. If you're living with aging parents or caring for a loved one, they have a number of different resources. They also have bereavement support groups, a hospice agency through Holy Cross. There is a link there as well. And our Jewish Social Service Agency is a non-sectarian nonprofit program. JESSA provides support services to more than 31,000 individuals throughout the county. And our own Rabbi Rose is from JESSA Hospice and provides a range of services. And also there's a new program called Voice Your Choice for Advanced Care Planning. Info Montgomery, bereavement adult groups, you can find that on the website. And Montgomery Hospice is another organization that has been in the county for many, many years. It was the first independent home care and hospice organization. Montgomery Hospice has bereavement care. They're a 24/7 organization. So like I said, I wanted to mention a few of these resources throughout the county. You have the links here to go and get more information. We will send you a list of all of the resources. In addition, your local places of worship will have many resources for you. Please reach out to them as well. If you need any additional information, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is listed at the end of the slide presentation. I'll be happy to connect you to any of these resources throughout the county Again, we have a number of different places that can help you, but don't forget your local places of worship. They would be the first places to go.
Thank you, Tina. Well, as you can see, our audience, that we have whizzed through almost an hour and a half of programming. I would like to introduce again, Dr. Shazli. Dina?
Yeah, what a wonderful stories and discussion and diverse resources we have. And on behalf of American Muslim Senior Society, I would like to thank each and everyone who participated in this event, especially our sponsor, Montgomery County Palliative Care and End of Life Coalition. We are also very grateful to our outstanding speakers, Dr. Reverend Jerome Pitts, Imam Muhammad Abdullahi, and Rabbi David Rose. Special thanks to our stakeholders, Dana Phillips Mason, the eloquent moderator of this event, and Tina Purcell Langley with Montgomery County Aging and Disabilities Services for her technical support and for her excellent presentation of the great county resources. Thanks are also due to Malak Abdul Hamid, our AMSS program specialist, for her technical expertise and support. Now, last but certainly not least, special appreciation and thanks are due to our dear friend and founder of AMSS, Mona Negm, who with her hard work and dedication made our dream come true. Thank you all for your valuable time, and we will be looking forward to have you again on Thursday, the 24th of September for the second part of our series of Interfaith Dialogue. Thank you all. Peace, shalom, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, and this is Donna again saying we hope we'll see you again, but all of the resources from this webinar will be on the AMPS website. So if you didn't get the email addresses of our presenters, if you didn't get the resource list, but also we would like to encourage you to answer the brief survey you will receive after this dialogue. Your responses will help AMPS with future programming. So thank you again to everybody who made this possible. Until we see you again, stay well. Thank you.
Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
God bless.